Discover the amazing transformation of a ruthless mafia boss, how I inspired his hidden heart. The fluorescent lights in the hospital room flickered like the uncertainty in Marco Romano's mind. He lay there, bandaged and bruised, a notorious mafia boss reduced to a patient fighting for life. The scent of antiseptic felt foreign against the weight of his past, each breath a reminder of the brutality that had shaped him. What did it mean to emerge from this darkness? Each question drummed into his skull like a hammer, but answers eluded him, replaced by shadows of a childhood he thought long buried. 3 days of silence had been his constant companion until she walked in. Sarah, a nurse whose warmth felt as alien as kindness itself. Her laughter had started thawing the ice around his heart, standing out as an anathema to his world of betrayal and fear. But her kindness only deepened his internal conflict. He could hear the echoes of his past louder now, chopping through the deluge of care she offered. Why would someone like her waste her time on someone like me? He thought. Loyalty. It was a word he had built his empire on, yet it now coiled tight around his chest, choking him with its grip. The streets outside twisted and turned in an unrelenting cycle of loyalty and betrayal, and Marco knew he was at the center of a storm that threatened everything he'd built. Every visit from Sarah intensified his hesitation. "You didn't have to choose this life, Marco," she had once whispered. "You could do better." Those words hung heavy in the air, gnawing at his conscience. How could she see him as more than a weapon? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The hospital's routine was a fragile bubble that threatened to burst, and each day he felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down harder. Tension twisted in his gut when his phone buzzed relentlessly, messages from his crew reminding him of the fractures appearing within his organization. Murmurs of discontent fluttered through the ranks, and he was painfully aware that his loyalty and his life were on a knife's edge. As Sarah continued to nurture him back from the brink, Marco battled feelings of desperation. His world was spiraling, remnants of his former self clawing at him, whispering of a life he could barely remember. Guilt coiled around him, taunting him with visions of lost potential, dreams of medical journals replaced by the violence that engulfed him. With every new revelation about her own life's triumphs, he felt a crack form within him. How could she choose hope when his own choices had sealed him in a prison of infamy? And as the tension coalesced, another betrayal loomed. Someone close to him was stirring the pot, ready to sever ties with unexpected ferocity. The temptation to lean into his rage faced him directly, and the clarity he had sought was nowhere in sight. Would he rise to protect Sarah, risking everything for the flicker of a new beginning, or would he succumb to the shadows that beckoned with their familiar embrace? As chaos seeped into the edges of his newfound reality, Marco stood on the precipice of change, every breath anchoring him deeper into the dilemma he fought to escape. The question swirled in his mind, dark and relentless: how far was he willing to go to find redemption, or would the shadows reclaim him before he had the chance to choose? The answer, elusive as smoke, seemed to dissolve before his eyes, leaving him in a chasm of uncertainty. The sterile environment of his hospital room felt more confining than prison bars. Marco lay on the edge of a decision that would ultimately define his existence. He could feel the pulse of his former life outside these white walls like a beating heart, seductive and dangerous. Each buzz of his phone drew him back into a world he was desperate to escape, one where every connection was laced with betrayal and violence. In the evening haze, Sarah returned, her presence a beacon in a landscape marred by darkness. Her smile cracked the tough exterior he had forged over decades. She approached his bed with a page of notes, an exuberance in her demeanor he found both comforting and unsettling. "Today's the day we start discussing your recuperation plan," she chimed, a spark of challenge in her eyes. Marco couldn't help but wonder why she fought for him against the tides of his past. It was a very human urge, to want to be seen, yet he balked at the notion. What if I relapse? He pondered, his thoughts swirling into familiar turmoil. What if my past comes hurtling back? Marco, she began, her voice steady, you may have made choices that took you down a dark path, but you have a chance now to choose differently. Her words struck deep, a challenge unwrapped from expectations. Choose differently. The phrase hung in the air, twirling through his mind, forcing him to confront the truth he had evaded. His aggression had long shielded him from vulnerability, now it was suffocating his future. With her eyes locked on his, Marco realized he had to confront the betrayal simmering beneath the surface in his organization. Another wave of responsibility crashed down on him. The phone buzzed relentlessly again, the digital siren reminding him of his life before this self-imposed exile. He needed to act. Resolutely, he asked Sarah, can you show me what I need to do, how to face this? She nodded, impressed yet cautious. It won't be easy. But you must be willing to break free from the man you were, she said, the weight of the moment settling between them. The initial spark of determination lit a fire in his veins. Over the next hours, he assessed his situation. Laying down the law for his operation would be risky. Fractured loyalties could spark outright war among his crew. Yet, fighting with the two-dimensional life of a mafia boss felt inadequate. He wanted to explore and reclaim his humanity. This was not just about protecting Sarah but also about rediscovering himself. Each of Sarah's visits offered a glimmer of hope, yet paradoxically the shadows around him seemed to grow darker, ready to consume any glimmer of light. Against all odds, part of him felt liberated. Under Sarah's encouragement, he accepted the call to action. The idea of confronting his inner demon solidified. But shadows don't surrender quietly. He knew that declaring war on darkness invited retaliation. As he gathered the last of his strength, the very ground under him roared with uncertainty. Would his first steps toward change be met with aggression from those who once revered him? Or could he inspire loyalty, not through fear but through a new vision? As he prepared for the storm he knew was brewing, Marco steadied himself. The internal battle could no longer wait, the time had come to face his past. Whether he would be consumed by it or if he could, against all odds, reclaim not just his life but his very soul, rested heavily on the precipice before him. With his resolve firming, a thought cut through the haze: how would I confront them? And can one man's redemption alter the course of many? A shiver of determination tinged with fear coursed through him, illuminating the stark reality a reckoning awaited. Would he embrace the tempest, or would he be swept away? The morning light streamed through the narrow window, casting stripes of brightness across the cold, sterile floor. Marco closed his eyes, absorbing the weight of the world pressing against his chest. The decision to confront his past loomed over him like an impending storm, ready to unleash chaos. He had battled against his impulses for so long, was it even possible to reclaim the shreds of his humanity? His mind raced between strategy and doubt, igniting the flickering flame of determination that had been kindled during his conversations with Sarah. The days of indifference and aggression were behind him, but the question remained: how could he rebuild what had been shattered? As he reflected on his once unyielding authority, he recognized that power, in its old form, was little more than an illusion. Could he forge a new identity, one that inspired respect rather than fear? Allow yourself to feel, Marco, Sarah had urged him during her last visit. Step into vulnerability, that's where true strength lies. Her words echoed, adding a layer of complexity to his journey. To reach out and connect underpinned his past experiences, eroded by the harsh realities that loyalty would be a tenuous thread among a tapestry of betrayal. It was time to plan his first steps. He envisioned a meeting with the key players in his organization. This couldn't be a simple confrontation, reckless and devoid of purpose. Instead, he would utilize every ounce of his instinct for business acumen, channeling it toward a different kind of alliance. A vision of mutual support, where loyalty transformed into a bond unbroken by threats. His heart raced at the thought of actualizing this shift. Could a dialogue be forged where there was once only silence surrounded by fear? The first move would be contact, but how could he do it without falling prey to old habits? He picked up his phone deliberately, fingers hovering over the screen as he contemplated the deliberation required. Eventually, he sent out a text to a trusted associate, Sal. Need to meet. Important. That single message rolled out like the first drop of rain before a storm. As he waited for a response, he felt the dissonance of anticipation mingle with unease. Would Sal consider this an act of weakness, or see it for what it was, a chance to recalibrate their relationships? The stakes were high, but so was his resolve. As if sensing his turmoil, Sarah had emphasized the importance of intentionality in every action. This would not be a moment marked by impulsiveness, it would be meticulously crafted. Hours trickled by, each second stretching like an elastic band pulled taut. Marco felt himself retreating into layers of self-doubt. What if his plan strayed into a display of vulnerability perceived as a threat? Anxiety bubbled beneath the surface, clashing with his vision of reform. He reminded himself that this was not solely about survival. This was firstly about breaking through the chains he had forged, the ones that bound not only his heart but also the very men he had once ruled over with an iron fist. The moment his phone pinged with Sal's response, a simple acknowledgement without response, was both a comfort and a worry. It was only a prelude to an eventual confrontation. Soon, he would face the men he had once commanded. Soon, he would have to reveal not just his intentions but himself, stripped of the layers of bravado that had protected him. As evening crept in, Marco felt a fierce urgency. He needed to prepare for the questions that would come, how to articulate his desires for change without revealing his vulnerabilities too soon. Still, uncertainty gnawed at him. Would Sal and the others resonate with his newfound purpose or conclude that the old Marco was irretrievably lost? The sense of imminent vulnerability weighed heavily, compelling him to ready himself psychologically. He thought, what am I willing to risk for this possible transformation? As dusk settled outside, cloaked in shadows, he understood it was not merely his life on the line but his very soul. The door swung open, and an unmistakable figure crossed his threshold. Sal. You said it was important, he said, his demeanor cautious but corrective, and so began Marco's real battle, not just for his life, but for the truth of who he could become in the eyes of those he had once commanded. Would he find acceptance or scorn in the harsh light of reality? The answer awaited, lurking just beyond the threshold of their conversation. Would this be the turning point, or merely a moment of reckoning? Sal stepped inside, visibly measuring the atmosphere, searching for signs of the man he knew so well. Marco felt himself stiffen, the past rising like a specter, taunting him. This was the moment he had dreaded and longed for, a confrontation ripe with potential but fraught with peril. Okay, let us hear it, Sal urged, crossing his arms defensively. The challenge lingered in the air, poised to puncture both their facades. Marco inhaled deeply, gathering the shards of his courage. Things can't continue as they have, he stated, his voice steady despite the storm within. I want to change how we operate, how we interact. Sal's brow furrowed, skepticism etched on his features. Change? You think after everything you've done, people are going to follow you just because you say so? The response hit Marco hard. Self-doubt slithered back in, forcing him to reevaluate. I know I can't erase the past, he conceded. But I need to be honest. I want to build trust, not fear. Sal's expression shifted, curiosity edging out skepticism. Trust isn't built overnight, especially not from where we're coming. Marco leaned forward, his intensity sharpening. I was wrong, and I'm ready to own it. I want to establish a new foundation, working together, instead of above each other. A flash of incredulity crossed Sal's face. So what, we forget everything and just adapt to your new playbook? No, Marco replied, each word deliberate. But we can reintegrate our values. Loyalty can't thrive when it's based on fear. We have to be a team. An air of contemplation enveloped Sal as he processed Marco's proposition. This wasn't merely a survival instinct, there was vulnerability spilling into the cracks of Marco's hardened persona. What makes you think they'll listen? Sal asked, leaning against the wall. What's in it for them? The chance to regain some sense of agency, of respect, Marco shot back. It was undeniable that the allure of power had corrupted his vision. I'll meet with them. If they want to reject me, I'll leave myself open to that outcome. Sal's gaze softened, insight breaking through barriers. You really believe you can shift their mindset? That you can walk the walk after everything? Yes, Marco answered, fire igniting again in his chest. I've known only domination for too long, and it's hollow. If I can't lay down my armor, then this is for nothing. Silence lingered, charged with possibility, a bridge suspended over a chasm of cynicism. Finally, Sal nodded slowly, his stance loosening. All right. I'll stand by you. Just know if you falter, it'll break more than your ego. The notion of vulnerability was unsettling yet liberating. Marco felt weight lift. He had made a first step, albeit a precarious one. As Sal turned to leave, Marco's heart raced. I need your support in gathering everyone, he called after him. Sal paused, glancing back. You've got an uphill battle ahead. I'm aware, Marco said. But if I am to change and genuinely become this person I want to be, I need to lead not with power, but through empathy. I have no more fortresses to hide in. With a determined nod, Sal disappeared into the dimming light, leaving Marco alone in a now quiet room. His imagination caught fire, envisioning the conversations that were yet to transpire. What if the tides could turn? What if those who feared him saw a flicker of something more beneath the surface? The road ahead would demand sacrifices, unyielding fortitude, and perhaps, the discovery of new strengths he had never acknowledged. As night fell, he stood at the edge of a new frontier, the heaviness of anticipation twisting inside him. Would he have the courage to walk into the room and face the very people whose respect he had shattered? Tomorrow, he would summon them. Tomorrow, everything would change or remain stubbornly intact. Regardless of the outcome, one thought nagged at him as sleep eluded him: the truth of his own transformation hinged not solely on nurturing that connection but also on the uncharted depths of his resolve. Could he truly confront the consequences of his past while guiding others to envision a new future? With uncertainty weighing heavily on his shoulders, Marco forged ahead into his restless night, knowing that dawn would bring clarity or further chaos. What awaited him at the threshold of his own redemption? The morning sun spilled through the thin curtains, casting a wavering light across Marco's face. He blinked against the brightness, a stark reminder of the new day and the commitment he had made. Memories of yesterday's conversation with Sal echoed in his mind, alternating between the warmth of hope and the chill of fear. As he prepared himself, doubt clawed at him, whispering warnings against his audacious plans. Why would they listen? He murmured to himself, tightening his grip on the edge of the countertop. At that moment, his reflection in the glass revealed more than he had intended. His eyes were shadowed by uncertainty, and vulnerability flickered just beneath. Was he truly ready to abandon the armor of intimidation for the fragile fabric of trust? He straightened, forcing himself to step away from self-doubt. The echo of Sal's words lingered. If he faltered, it would shatter more than his ego. If he truly meant to change, he needed to prepare for the worst: rejection, disdain, and perhaps even laughter. With that thought firm in his mind, he gathered his resolve and stepped out into the world that awaited. The meeting space was a small, slightly dingy room in the back of a forgotten bar, a stark contrast to the powerful settings he had typically favored. Dust motes danced in the thin rays of light streaming through grimy windows, creating an atmosphere that felt tentative and raw. He could envision his former self staking his claim here, but today would be different. Today was about awakening something new. As he took his seat at one end of the table, he sensed the weight of expectation from the others who filtered in. The last time they had gathered, the air had been thick with both loyalty and fear. Today, he hoped for something more: understanding, cooperation, a mutual desire to thrive. One by one, they settled into their seats, faces guarded and expressions unreadable. He greeted them with a nod but could feel the tension threading its way through the room. Clearing his throat, Marco began, "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't easy." The first murmurs of dissent met him, echoing in the backdrop accusations that he was merely putting on a show, another performance dressed in unfamiliar clothing. Marco listened intently. Each word served as a reminder of his past transgressions and the steep hill he needed to climb. "I can't change what I've done, but I can change how I lead," he continued, his voice unwavering. "I need you to consider a future where we're not just survivors in a ruthless world but a team that fights for something better." The room fell into silence, only the soft scratching of pens breaking through. He pressed on, sharing the details of his vision, speaking of respect and agency, of dismantling fear to build solidarity. Each paragraph of his speech felt both freeing and constrictive, as though he was revealing himself for the first time while desperately fearing their judgment. That as he spoke passionately, Marco discovered an unexpected realization: the more he shared his vulnerabilities, the more animated his voice became. Each admission carved away the remnants of his past bravado, replacing it with the authenticity he had yearned to express. Eyes began to shift, revealing mixed reactions, some wary, others intrigued. In that connective moment, Marco felt something begin to transform. It wasn't merely the fear they harbored, it was a flicker of curiosity igniting in their hearts. Then came the pivotal moment. A grizzled figure spoke up, breaking the suffocating silence. "You think this is just going to change overnight, Marco? What if we can't trust you? What if Samir is right? You've destroyed what we built." The room stilled again, every gaze fixed on him. The challenge was unmistakable and sobering. "Perhaps I've torn things down," Marco replied slowly, grappling with the weight of those words. "But I believe we can rebuild something stronger. But I need you. I need to know if you're willing to take that leap with me." In that moment of vulnerability, Marco faced not just them but also his own fears. He laid bare his hopes for a new beginning. He felt on the brink of a new revelation, not just about their potential, but about himself. "Every single one of you has a choice," he continued, voice steadier than he felt. "To doubt me, or to find out what we could become together." As he looked around, searching for any glimmer of acceptance, the intensity in the air thickened. He could taste the uncertainty of what was to come, yet knew this was just one chapter in an unfolding narrative. Would they rise with him, or would they retreat? The silence that followed was palpable, teetering on the brink of resolution or rejection. Marco realized this was not simply about fostering change, it was about embracing the daunting truths of collaboration and accountability, paving the way toward redemption. As the room held its breath, he pondered, would they confront the past together, or would the shadows of history pull them apart again? What decision would they make, and how would it shape him? The silence lingered far too long, suffocating and thick. Marco could feel the blood rushing in his ears, pulsing through thoughts that raced as fast as a freight train. He surveyed the faces before him, some weathered by the storms of loyalty, others bearing the scars of doubt. He had always feared confrontation, but now it was the only pathway forward. What will it take? He pressed, taking a small step toward the center of the table, feeling an odd mix of vulnerability and defiance simmering inside him. What will it take for you to trust me? To be a part of this change? From the corner, a young man with a hardened expression spoke up. So you want us to place our faith in the person who led us into worse situations? You think just saying you want to change is enough? Marco felt the sharpness of the accusation but met the young man's gaze, searching for the person beneath the fierceness. I know I can't undo the past, but perhaps I can prove myself differently now. How about I show you? There's a fine line between trust and blind faith, Marco. Another voice chimed in. This is a dangerous game you're playing. I'm not asking for blind faith, Marco replied, his urgency pushing him forward. I'm asking for a chance. I need all of you to take a step back and think what it means to be part of something greater than ourselves. As the words left his mouth, a ripple of expressions washed over the group, some softening, others hardening. In that moment, embryos of ideas danced in his mind. Could he turn this skepticism into something constructive? Or was he setting himself up for a deeper fall? I'm proposing that we participate in something tangible together, he said, his confidence methodically building. Let us collaborate on a project that embodies our new vision. We can work together, and through this, you can see my commitment firsthand. A large man with tattoos etched beneath his sleeves leaned back, arms crossed. What kind of project? A community outreach initiative, Marco replied, the concept resonating in the air. One that helps the neighborhoods we've impacted. It could change how people see us, how we perceive ourselves. It's not about being outlaws, but about becoming leaders in our community. The table had shifted into a murmur, thoughts clashing and colliding in midair. Did he really just propose something so radical? This is a one-way ticket to betrayal, challenged the same young man. What's to stop you from pulling the rug out from under us again? That's exactly why I need you, Marco answered, deep sincerity threading through his voice. We can hold each other accountable. I need each of you as part of this journey. Every decision, every step forward should be collectively ours. Breath held in the room, Marco sensed something nascent emerging, an unspoken pact, as if their fates began to intertwine around the idea he had conjured. The shadows of doubt still danced in their eyes, but the flicker of curiosity was taking form. Trust is built, not given, Marco reminded them, and I'm prepared to earn that through action, not just words. A woman who had remained silent until now cleared her throat. And if this fails? What then? Marco could feel the weight of anticipation coalescing around the question, a defining keystone in his proposed edifice of change. Then I will wear it. That's my risk to take. Suddenly, the room filled with a hesitant energy. The ground on which they stood felt fluid, and the decision that loomed over them was more than a matter of opinion. The older man, the first to challenge him, finally spoke again, all right, I'll bite. But know this, if you betray this chance, there won't be a second. Agreed, Marco replied, getting a nod from the others who had begun to see him transparently once more, some nerves still flickering, but the initial walls trembling. A new plan shimmered on the horizon. He needed focus, actionable strategies, and fervent energy to push this conversation forward. It was time to execute their first steps into an unknown terrain where only sincerity and accountability mattered. Let us take this on and prepare to meet again. We'll lay out our goals and create a plan. I won't allow this to be just another fleeting moment. His heart raced, knowing he was now at the edge of another precipice. As they began to talk logistics, Marco felt himself transformed in a way he hadn't anticipated. It was profoundly affirming. He realized this was not only a test of the group's commitment but also a reflection of his evolving identity, and then, like a clap of thunder, doubt surged back, the realization that every step they took forward would come with its own weight of consequences. Marco could only wonder if he had ignited too much hope too soon. Was he ready for what lay ahead? What sins from his past might resurface to haunt this fragile transformation? The threads of change were woven. Now all he could do was hope they wouldn't unravel before his eyes. Marco sat in the dimly lit corner of the meeting room, the hum of conversation and planning buzzing around him. The group had fractured into smaller discussions, minds grappling with the contours of his proposal. Yet amidst the chaos, one thought remained firm in his own mind: he had crossed a threshold, and now there was no going back. He watched their interactions, each laughter and nod an echo of his own burgeoning determination. They were grappling with the semblance of trust, the beginnings of a new chapter, but he felt an undercurrent of fear tugging at the edges of his resolve. Was he truly prepared to lead them where his vision promised? The weights of his past actions loomed like shadows, whirlwinds of doubt spiraling within him. I need to see this through, he muttered under his breath, as if the words could solidify his floundering confidence. The conversations around him simmered down, bringing his focus back. Someone leaned toward him. It was the tattooed man, curiosity etched on his face. You sure about this, Marco? It's a heavy lift. Heavy. The word was a weight on his chest. It's no longer just about me. The admission felt cathartic, yet terrifying. But a whisper in his mind questioned if he truly believed his own words. Did he have it in him to prioritize them over his past? As the meeting adjourned, he remained seated, processing the gravity of their discussions. Ideas were penned into a notepad, but the true battle lay in the intent behind those scribbles. How could he illuminate a path for them without losing himself once again to the mess of yesterday? He rose and left the room, taking a breath of the chilled night air, allowing the crispness to sweep away a fragment of his fear. Days passed, and his concerns shifted from abstract projections of failure to tangible actions that lined up on his agenda. He established regular meetings where they mapped out the initiatives, each session introducing a new layer of complexity. Each step forward revealed more about what leadership demanded. He felt the weight of accountability pressing down with every decision discussed, every dissenting voice challenged. This wasn't a solo act, it was a collective endeavor, but he still had to remain firm at the front lines. Silence was replaced with thoughtfulness, and he found himself directing the group, even as anguish from his past resurfaced. Nights spent reflecting on the faces of those he had failed haunted him, a reminder that redemption was never a straight line. It was a complicated mosaic of failure interwoven with strands of success, and he began to appreciate that those same failures could teach him resilience. "Marco, what's the endgame here?" The question broke through one of their brainstorming sessions. It was the young man, still skeptical, standing firm in his judgment. This time, Marco felt a flicker of truth ignite within him. "I can't predict every outcome," he admitted, eyes scanning the group. "But I can promise that this is a journey toward accountability and growth. Together." The word together sat heavy, almost prophetic. It demanded a realization: trust, once born from actions, needed nourishment and space to flourish. But what if their trust slipped through his fingers? He swallowed hard, masking the turmoil inside that he immersed himself deeper into the project, overcoming his anxieties and channeling them into tangible tasks. He became the shift he sought, working overtime, soliciting feedback. But with each advance, there were setbacks. The community was resistant, old stigmas hung like chains around their necks. Each rejection echoed his fears, but he steeled himself against the rising tide of doubt. The meetings continued, morphing into intense sessions where he confronted his own failures while guiding the others through theirs. It was raw, it was real. In confronting the ghosts of his past, he learned more about his own capacity for growth and redemption. They would fail, it was inevitable. But the real question loomed larger: how would they rise after, one evening, after a particularly difficult meeting, Marco found himself staring at his reflection in the window's murky glass. He seemed like a ghost of the man he had been. But here, confronting himself, he saw a spark of potential, a leader emerging, not from dominance, but from vulnerability. But the nagging uncertainties persisted. Was this growth a mask to hide behind, or a genuine transformation? The night deepened, and he realized that the journey was perhaps less about proving himself to them and more about discovering what he truly could reflect back to himself. As he turned away from the window, he knew he was on the precipice of a crucial revelation, one that would either shatter or illuminate his path ahead. Marco's fate hung precariously between his past and the unexplored future. Was he ready to unveil his truest self, or would he find that the very foundation of his new identity was built on shaky ground? In the weeks that followed, the rhythm of Marco's life took on a new cadence, pulsing with the energy of his resolve and the weight of his responsibilities. He was not merely guiding the group, he was reshaping himself in the process. Each meeting became a stage where he faced his own fears, peeling back layers of his past while demanding the same vulnerability from others. It felt like a high-wire act, balancing the twin pressures of leading and confessing. One morning, as he rifled through a pile of feedback forms, an unexpected comment caught his eye: "Your honesty about your struggles inspired me." It was from the young skeptic who had questioned his intentions. The words resonated, igniting a flicker of hope in his chest. For the first time, he began to see a glimpse of what "together" could mean: not just a watchful commitment from them, but a shared journey toward healing. Yet, with each small victory came an equally fierce reminder of what was at stake. He began to hear murmurs of doubts falling back into old patterns, members of the group slipping into cynicism after setbacks. The same young man who had praised him now complained about the slow progress. "I thought you were different," he challenged one afternoon, eyes dark and disappointed. Marco felt the ice around his heart crack, every pulse of dissent echoing the ghosts of his past. He needed to confront not just the doubts of his team, but the one haunting him daily. "I am different," he countered, grounding himself in his own conviction. "But change takes time. It's a marathon, not a sprint." He hoped that honesty could stitch together the fissures growing within their collective spirit. A few days later, as he prepared for another meeting, he caught himself thinking about his own failures more deeply. Leaning against the desk, he remembered the moments he had abandoned others for his comfort, flushing the painful memories away. "How could I share my growth," he wondered, "if I cannot own my past?" Determined, Marco prepared to open up. The meeting commenced in the usual fashion, a volley of suggestions and critiques, yet he knew he had to shift the dialogue. "I need to share something with you," he spoke, his voice steady but raw. "I've made choices that hurt people. I've failed, and it's time I own that. But here's what I learned: authenticity is born from vulnerability." Silence followed, eyes trained on him, absorbing his admission. Adrenaline surged through him. It was scary to unearth that truth, yet liberating. Marco felt the old weight lift as the glimmers of understanding spread through the room. Whether it was pride, respect, or compassion that tightened their bonds, he could not tell, but during the next discussion, the atmosphere shifted palpably. Ideas flowed more freely, and where there had been hesitance, there was now curiosity. They were inspired to share their own struggles and successes, unveiling layers within themselves. As the weeks turned into months, Marco embraced his role as a facilitator of change. He welcomed dissent, cherishing it as a crucial part of the dialogue, an essential element of mutual respect. Every disagreement became a chance to fine-tune their objectives, binding them in the struggle of collective growth. Yet late at night, he still found himself wrestling with doubt. Was this newfound connection deep enough? Could he ultimately trust himself to lead them where they needed to go? The thought of genuine failure loomed, threatening to pull him back into the abyss of mistrust. In one poignant moment, as he stood in front of his window again, he saw not just a reflection of his struggle, but of all the lives that intertwined with his growing vision. He closed his eyes, feeling a rush of fierce determination. With the sun beginning to rise, casting gold hues over the horizon, he knew in his heart that the true test of his leadership was just beginning. The question nagged at him relentlessly: what would happen when he had to face the very failures he was working to overcome? Was he prepared for the real confrontation that awaited him, or would he falter when stakes were highest? The answers lay just beyond the dawn, and with a heart racing toward the inevitable challenge, he took a deep breath, pushing against the weight of expectation that bore down like a shadow. Days turned into hours of introspection as Marco plunged deeper into the heart of his leadership journey. Each morning, the sun cast long shadows in his office, whispering the tale of commitment he was forging with those around him. Yet, the shadows also served as a reminder of his own shortcomings, tempting him to retreat into the safety of avoidance, a behavior he knew all too well. During the next meeting, he felt a palpable shift in the room. While he had sensed a growing camaraderie, it was now interspersed with tension and gnawing sense of ultimatum. The members were eager for resolutions, quick to question his ability to guide them. Vulnerability, he realized, was a double-edged sword, giving rise to strength but also exposing fragility. "Lately, I sense you're hesitant about the next steps," Marco began, offering a cautious smile. "I'd like to know what specifically is holding you back from pushing forward. Let's be honest together." The silence that followed was heavy with unease, as if everyone were grappling with their own internal doubts. Then came a voice from the back, shaky yet firm. "What if we just aren't ready? Your vision feels vast." "I'm scared, Marco." Her fear struck a chord within him, echoing his own unease. What he perceived as boldness in planning felt, at that moment, dangerously close to arrogance. Did he truly understand their individual struggles? "I appreciate your honesty," he responded slowly, weighing each word. "But let us explore this fear. What makes it feel unattainable?" As they delved deeper into the discussions, Marco found himself torn between two instincts: the desire to inject optimism and the need to validate their uncertainties. Each response laid bare not only their fears but also his what if he failed, not just himself but the trust they had placed in him. On his drive home, the gravity of their concerns rattled through him. He realized that leading meant reassuring them while not glossing over his own uncertainties. Each doubt felt amplified in his consciousness, chasing away the echoes of reassurance he had so valiantly crafted. That evening, he found himself pulled to a worn journal he had stashed away. Flipping through the pages, he allowed himself to revisit old entries that chronicled a darker period in his life, times when he had succumbed to despair. It was a raw confrontation, yet in those words, he began to unravel a hidden thread of resilience woven into his past failures. With newfound clarity, Marco recognized a pattern: his tendency to mask vulnerabilities could hinder authentic connection. He needed to share not just his triumphs but the discomfort of his growth. Tomorrow, he resolved, he would step into the arena of candor with no filter. When the next meeting convened, Marco's heart raced. The room felt heavier with expectation. The air was charged with anticipation, a mirror to his internal quandary. He took a deep breath, willing his legs to remain steady. "I've been reflecting," he began, locking eyes with those gathered. "I've faced fears much like what you described. Doubts about whether I'm the right person for this role haunted me, just as they do you. Let me share a story from my past." He proceeded, opening up about the failures and decisions that haunted him, not as a leader but as a flawed individual. Gradually, the room shifted as vulnerability washed over them like rain on parched soil. They responded not simply as a group but as individuals interconnected by shared experiences. One person expressed empathy for Marco's earlier struggles, another shared their own, igniting a spark of connection that transcended his expectations. As discussions began to flow, he felt a sense of relief wash over him. Yet another voice emerged from the fray, piercing through the optimism. "But what if we fail? What if we don't live up to this progress?" The question hung in the air, sharp and unsettling. As he pondered, a familiar sense of dread crept back, in the illusion of control slipping away yet again. Instead of retreating, he met the challenge head-on. "Failure is part of the process, and I have learned that it doesn't define us," Marco stated with conviction. "Each setback can be a stepping stone." In that moment, the group collectively exhaled, the weight of fear shifting into something more manageable. Hope mingled with realism. But apprehension lingered, hovering like smoke, suggesting their journey was only just beginning. Despite the small victories, uncertainty lingered in Marco's mind. How far had they truly come? What awaited him if they faltered in the face of adversity? He stared into the void of those questions, battling against the escalating doubt. The true test of his leadership had yet to manifest, but it loomed ominously on the horizon, waiting to demand its reckoning. The echoes of Marco Romano's past had reverberated through every fiber of his being, but today, an unmistakable transformation flourished in his spirit. He stood at the crossroads not just for himself, but for the group whose trust he had been diligently cultivating through vulnerability and honesty. With determination coursing through him, he looked at the group gathered before him, a mosaic of faces brimming with anticipation. Feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, Marco initiated the meeting with unwavering clarity. "We've traversed challenges that tested our resolve," he began, "and it's time to reflect on our journey and future." His voice, steadier than in days past, carried the timbre of newfound confidence. "What we've built is fragile, but its foundation is forged through our collective willingness to confront the shadows together." As he spoke, the tension in the room slowly dissipated. Members began sharing their victories, the moments of doubt they transformed into stepping stones. They discussed the changes in their own lives, feelings of empowerment replacing fear. Marco's heart swelled, recognizing the profound shift occurring not just within him, but throughout the group as well. The once fractured entity was slowly becoming a cohesive unit forged from empathy and collective growth. In that moment, Marco felt an authentic pride blooming within him. He had overcome the crippling grips of adversity, emerging not as a feared leader but as a trusted ally. He had chosen a different narrative, one where accountability bridged the chasm of mistrust he had created. The realization flowed through him like a renewed breath: he had conquered his past while simultaneously earning respect from those who once viewed him warily. Through these meetings, Marco had established himself as a pivotal force for change. He had transformed from a ruthless mafia boss to a leader advocating for community development and healing. With his vision of launching a community outreach initiative finally gaining traction, he shared concrete plans with palpable excitement. Let us start by engaging our neighbors, organizing events that foster goodwill and connection. We can initiate outreach programs, providing resources and opportunities for our communities to flourish, he proposed, enthusiasm punctuating his words. The presence of tangible goals infused the atmosphere with possibility, and they collectively began crafting an actionable blueprint. That night, the group departed filled with ambition, ready to roll out their initiatives to create not just change in sentiment but change in the very neighborhoods they had once overlooked. It was a testament to their resilience, a striking example of growth manifested through action. Days turned into weeks as Marco embraced his role not just as a mentor to the group, but as an active participant in their projects. Every program implemented breathed life into his desire for redemption. No longer confined to the shadows of his past, he flourished under the weight of new responsibilities, cultivating relationships based on trust and shared purpose. Yet, even as he relished their progress, an internal reminder persisted: success was never guaranteed, and failures were woven into the fabric of growth. In times of uncertainty, he would gather the team and affirm once more what we've accomplished is remarkable, but it stemmed from our vulnerability. Remember that in adversity, our unity defines us. On a brisk Saturday morning, the outreach initiative kickoff found Marco standing before a crowd of neighbors gathered at a community park. Families mingled, their children exploring newfound friendships as Marco took the podium. Nervous energy buzzed through him, yet he felt undeniably grounded, a man transformed. We stand here today not merely as individuals but as a collective, united by a vision of fostering connection and healing in our community, he articulated, his voice carrying foliage of strength. This project is not about who we were but who we aspire to become. Together, we will rebuild trust not just in ourselves, but in the communities we serve. As applause washed over him, Marco felt the resonance of his triumph solidify, each echo resonating with a promise of redemption fulfilled. He had truly transformed, embracing empathy over fear, connection over desolation. Moments of reflection sifted through his thoughts as he stepped away from the podium. He had not only achieved professional success, he had conquered his inner demons and was not only recognized but revered for it. Marco Romano had emerged from the shadows, leading not from a place of fear, but from the vulnerability that birthed authentic leadership. Realizing the potency of his journey, Marco turned to his waiting colleagues, pride bubbling within him. He forged a new path, one grounded in trust and accountability, one that resonated deeply within his soul. The culmination of his journey encapsulated the depth of transformation he had lived through, from the echoes of a life entwined with violence to embracing one imbued with purpose. Finally, he could appreciate what it meant to lead with authenticity. As the sun began to set, washing the sky with hues of warmth, Marco knew this was not just an ending, it was an everlasting beginning. Now, more than ever, it is crucial for you to join this journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Comment your reactions and theories about this incredible conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey unfold. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of stories of personal overcoming understand the importance of standing together in this growth.